Welcome to Ask Syd, the official podcast for Sydenham Clinic, a clinic where luxury meets medicine. We are on a quest for longevity. And I am so thrilled to be your host on this show. My name is Anchal Bhatia. I am the founder and CEO of Sydenham Clinic and the author of Your Doctor is Not God and How to Be the CEO of Your Health. I look forward to taking this journey with all of you and having amazing thought leaders, guests, and members of our Sydenham team answering questions that you put forward. And I urge you, and I hope you will, ask Syd more questions on longevity, wellness, living to your highest potential. We are all trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And our physical, emotional, and mental health is foundational for us to achieve health and success in other realms of our life. So welcome to Ask Syd. Welcome back to Ask Syd. I know it's been a while since we've been answering some of your questions, but thank you so much for sharing all your love and sending in questions. Keep doing that because we want to dive deeper and deeper into more topics related to health, wellness, and longevity. Today's topic is very foundational but very important, which is the gut microbiome. And believe it or not, our gut microbiome is even more important than our genes, and they outnumber our genes 100:1. So today we have somebody who's not only a specialist in the gut microbiome but is also a molecular scientist. So she understands genes as well as she understands the gut microbiome, and she's our very own clinical nutritionist at Sydenham Clinic. I am so proud to introduce Heather Dockstader. Heather, welcome. Thank you so much for your first podcast, and thank you for being part of our Sydenham team.
Thank you. It is such a joy to be here. I enjoy it immensely.
Well, for some of our members, I know you've met all our Sydenham members, but some have still not met you, and a lot of people who follow Ask Syd don't know your background. Can we start by you introducing yourself and explaining how you really got into this field? Because I know you worked in a very clinical setting before as a scientist, but now you're really impacting lives.
Yes. Well, I have over 9 years experience in genetic analysis and nutrition. And it all started with just a passion for genetics and wanting to see how that would impact our health. Mm-hmm. And so I went through MD Anderson and I studied there and then worked at MD Anderson. And I really was drawn to the world of cancer. And so a lot of my experience was in diagnostics of cancer, looking at chromosomes and genetic abnormalities for diagnosis of cancers. But then it led me over to the research and development side where I got involved in clinical trials. So it's several years where I was working operations for and efficiency for clinical trials in just drug discoveries and hotspot discoveries. But in it, I can remember one of my first classes that I had on the pathology of cancer. And I remember this key little nugget of truth that in cancer, it's multifactorial, the disease is, but the biggest piece of the pie that will affect our occurrences of cancer is nutrition.
Really?
Yes, yes. What we put in our mouth matters so much.
So how I react to my cancer depends on my nutrition?
Actually, if your likelihood of even developing it.
Yes.
Between your genetics and your nutrition, it will affect you. And so from there, I had my own health journey, of course, and I was what I like to call wandering in the desert because I was going to many different practitioners and just not getting a whole lot of answers. And so from there, I did some functional testing, and it was digging into that functional testing that I just was overwhelmed with just the wealth of information that we can find out about ourselves and how we're operating, what are the root causes that are going on in our body.
Yeah, and that is transformational. It's a whole different paradigm shift
Yes.
in medicine, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And the whole importance of the gut microbiome. Till now, we always thought these microorganisms are like germs or foreign things that need to be killed with antibiotics or the whole germ theory. But now, like, there's a whole wave of information that we have, like that the more diverse we are, the more these foreign microbes that are present in us, the better it is for you. But tell us all about it. Like, what does it mean? What does gut flora mean? Like, think we're explaining it to a little child. Like, please break it down, because some of us have heard it, but we don't have the guts to ask. What is the gut microbiome?
Well, I like to start out with just a little background in that the Human Genome Project really was groundbreaking, right? And we thought we were going to have 500,000 genes that were going to influence our health. Well, it was kind of underwhelming, and we only had 22,000. Well, because of that science, it developed the technology that we could then sequence the microbiome. And from that, we have found, like you said, that of all the genetic information that's on our body, 99% of it is represented by the microbiome that's on us. So to explain it.
Wow, that is profound. Just repeat that. 99%
of the genetic material on and in us is from the microbiome.
Wow.
So looking specifically at the gut microbiome, I like to explain it like a rainforest. So when we go into what we call sequencing, it's just basically looking at the diversity that is your biome. We're looking at the tops of the trees to see what type of foliage you have, how dense is it? Is it lush and green, or is it sparse? And that's going to affect the species down below, what's at the ground level, what's rooting and growing, what's taking over, and
the weeds.
Yes, be it commensal good or be it pathogenic bad.
So what is, like, basically they're either fungi or they are bacteria, like, so what is actually going on, like, in the gut?
So
who are these microbes, foreign bodies?
So these microbes are actually mutualistic. We used to think that they would just be living there, but we actually need their byproducts for certain functions in our body. So along with digestion, they aid the movement through the small intestine, and then the metabolites, or what we call them, just the products that they produce through taking down the bolus of our food. They actually give things, we call them short chain fatty acids, but they are necessary for the health and the mechanisms that are within our body. So, but long before that, even just having a healthy gut biome, that's where all of our absorption works. So there's two big things to our gut microbiome. In our small intestine, that is where absorption of all the nutrients that we take in our body happens. So anything that's going to go to your liver, to your spleen, to your muscles, it's going to be broken down, and it's going to go through the small intestine to then be carried out to the body part that needs it. And also 70% of our immune system resides in our gut biome. So those two things go hand in hand, right? So what we're eating and how it nourishes us, as well as how our immune system functions to either notice things as friend or foe. And so if we don't have a microbiome that is in support of us, then these things can go haywire.
And you said, like, root cause. It can be related to mental health issues, skin issues, like you said, cancer. So for a second, like, again, reiterate how important the gut microbiome is from a disease prevention and a disease treatment perspective.
Sure. It's the start of inflammation. When inflammation starts in our body, it's coming from the cell signals that are coming from our gut, right? And so as that inflammation grows, it goes to different areas, and that can create, well, let me back up a little bit. In the 20th century, we were working on communicable diseases, and we had antibiotics wipe those out, right? And they did a lot of good. Well, in the 21st century, we're finding a lot of non-communicable diseases. Yeah. These are like cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's. And what they're finding is there's a low-grade inflammation amongst these that begins, that then progresses to these diseases. Well, where did that inflammation come from? Well, we go back to the gut microbiome. What does your rainforest look like? Do you have commensal bacteria in there? Do you have pathogenic? Are they working together? There's one group of bacteria that help us with our mucus lining, which I know is a little bit more detailed than we usually talk about, but your mucus lining is what allows your food to be absorbed in a timely fashion,
Right.
and it also keeps it healthy so that you're not having irritations, irritable bowel disease, things like that, or ulcerative colitis.
I mean, now that you have touched it, so, a lot of people have heard the word leaky gut.
Right.
Right. So is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a part of it.
Right.
There is aspects of leaky gut or dysbiosis. It's a fancy name for just not having the right percentage of the right populations in your gut. But leaky gut also happens when we have gaps in our cells in the small intestine, and it's allowing things through that aren't supposed to go through, and that will cause low-grade inflammation, which then triggers the cascade to those
So the whole paradigm shift is, I know you're reading this book on superorganisms.
Yes.
And you think like these are superorganisms. Like we have this superpower in our gut.
Yes.
And like these are our friends.
Absolutely. And by working with them in a synergistic way, then we can have control over or impact on whether we get those non-communicable diseases or whether we heal ourselves from them. So it was interesting in his book when he talks about the obesity epidemic, he doesn't go into a diet protocol at all. He goes into the microbiome. He's looking at what are the species that are either supporting digestion and health, or what are the species that are causing that dysbiosis, that leaky gut permeability.
That is so interesting. So let's go a little bit into, how you are taking this approach in a primary care setting, right? Like what we're doing in Sydenham is we are first your primary care physician.
Right.
And we're your primary care team. And every single member here works with you, right? So we have a gut health, genetic lens that we shine on every aspect of wellness, longevity, or disease.
Correct.
So can you explain to us how does it play out? And because this is the right way for people to be working with their doctor, right?
Absolutely.
You should be having like a gut specialist working along with your primary care doctor, and both of you work like a really cool team. So can you explain how, like give us some examples of how you like translate into real life care?
Sure, absolutely. Just like you go to your primary and annually, you'll get a CBC, right, to look at your blood chemistries and look at your lipid panel and how your blood sugar regulation is going. The same thing happens when we do a GI map. And basically, it is a map. It's just showing us all the species that are within that rainforest and how they're supposed to be working together. Is there one that's kind of overgrown that is not helping the others? I mean, for instance, we've all heard, well, maybe not all of us read books like I do about Akkermansia. It's a particular type of...
That's the newest supplement going around
town.
Like.
But it is one of those bacteria that helps and protects the mucus layer and stuff. And so we can look at all these different species of bacteria in our gut to see, are you working in the direction for health and longevity? Because this goes into the gut-brain axis. This goes into cardiovascular disease. This goes into, of course, inflammation and autoimmune diseases. Or are you having some dysbiosis? Are you having some issues because you're having these low-grade inflammations as a result of not having a complete ecosystem working for you?
Yeah.
So I will look at the GI map and I will analyze it based on the species from there. Yeah. And then we can just put a simple protocol where we're just reestablishing no permeability except for the right amount for the nutrients to go through. There's quite a few supplements that can help heal. We're looking for anything that might be an allergic irritant to your gut by the foods. It's interesting. One of the things I have found more and more is that for those people who are not adventurous in their palate, right, and they eat the same meals day in and day out, they start to develop a lot of allergic reactions to foods, basically from some GI symptoms.
Right.
But the thing of it is you're overwhelming certain microbes with those particular foods and not giving the other microbes the foods that they like. So for instance, if you're going to have your green beans and mashed potatoes and your chicken, you don't have a lot of fiber in that to feed the variety of species that are in there. So I would say something simple like, how about we have a quinoa in there instead of the mashed potatoes? And so things like that are going to feed your microbiome.
So switching things out, adding more things. So this is for normal, healthy people or people who might be looking very fit on the inside, on the outside, right? Because they eat the same food every day, but that actually may not be really reflective of a very healthy or a diverse gut.
Right, exactly. And that's what I love about us at Sydenham is because we're looking to optimize. We're not treating disease, we're treating health, and we're looking to optimize someone's health. And by looking at these functional tests regularly, we can do that, and we can tailor it specifically to that individual. Because we all don't eat the exact same things, not even if we're all in the same household.
And you tailor it based on real data coming out from their genetic makeup as well as their gut and their nutritional markers, right? Like
absolutely,
it's evidence-based, it's data-driven, personalized precision
absolutely,
medicine.
Because our food actually has influence over genetics, whether things are expressed or not. Think of it like a lamp. Whether the light switch, the electricity to the lamp is turned on or off, or how bright it is. And our foods can affect our genetic expression of things.
Especially for things like Alzheimer's and dementia. It's 20 years too late.
Right. Yes.
By the time, you had to make these changes 20 years ago. So that's what, we have the advantage. Like some of our members are in their 20s and they're really proactive about their health. And we can start to make that difference just based because you know their genomics. And now you know exactly, what to turn off and what to turn on.
Absolutely, and how to work well with them. And that's another thing, and looking at, because cancer is where it all began for me, I was reading the latest data, and actually colorectal cancer is increasing astonishingly in the 30 to 40-year-olds faster than your older generations.
Really?
Yes.
And
yes.
what do you think is contributing to that?
Well,
statistic?
the AICR is the governing body that puts out all our recommendations on how to keep that from happening. And there's a lot of theories going around, but all of the recommendations are geared around food.
Yeah, fiber in your diet.
Yes.
And our gut microbiome, like if you have to describe it, it also lives in our colon and stomach. Like if you can just give a description of where is it? Is it all over our body?
It is.
Is it more in some places?
It is skin, mouth, urogenital. It's everywhere.
But it is the gut microbiome. Or is it an oral microbiome?
Well,
separate?
We're getting to it. I actually was in a meeting recently, and there's a dentist that's looking at sequencing particular microbes of the mouth because it's similar in that way. If we have mouth issues, not that I am abreast of all of them and stuff, but it is dependent on your microbiome. Even in, urogenital and stuff like that, working to have the right, because there are particular species that live in certain areas, right? And that is actually one of the things I look for in the GI map. There are particular bacteria that are supposed to be in the stomach, right, where it's very acidic. But if we see them in the mouth, if they start in the mouth and we see them in the small intestine, we know that they haven't gone through the stomach where there's acidity to kill them off. So that might be that person does not have enough of hydrochloric acid in their stomach to help with the digestion. And this microbe is actually moving to the small intestine.
So they do belong in certain places.
Yes.
And if they're out of place, that's a sign and you pick it up and we treat that.
Exactly.
How fascinating is this? And we're just scratching the surface, right? Like there's so much more stuff coming out. Like, what do you think the future looks like?
Well, I do want, it's kind of like my personal mission, I do want there to be a microbiome test annually, just so that we can work on the health of an individual. But I do see it as this is opening up this next paradigm shift, right? Yeah. In modern medicine to be treating these non-communicable diseases. And we've been kind coming up against a wall, basically. And I feel like when you're looking at the microbiome, it's opening ideas and concepts that we haven't engaged in before in medicine.
Yeah, it would be really important for traditional medicine to now embracing this and integrating it versus saying, oh, you work with your nutritionist or your dietitian about this, and your primary care physician or your cardiovascular physician is not working with you. Like
it's hard because there is so much data. If you think about it, right? Remember how you said at the very beginning, we're looking at 99% of the genetic material on us. That is an incredible amount of data, and understanding how it works synergistically within the ecosystem itself and then within our biosystems as well. It is a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of information, but I think before we wrap up, if you could also talk a little bit about prebiotics and probiotics and their role and how, that's impacting our gut health.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's what I work with individually, like we talked about in somebody's meals and how they're doing their diet and stuff. So basically soluble and insoluble fiber, that is what they live on, that is what they eat. Now, the pathogenic ones love some sugar. So if you're eating a diet with a lot of sugar, you tend to feed
bad guys.
The overgrow and opportunistic, we should call it, not pathogenic, an opportunistic species that is not at the right level that we need. So I can actually, it's interesting, just a little tidbit, I can look at between two particular phyla, and one prefers protein and one prefers carbohydrates. And so looking at the ratio of each, I can see which kind of diet we're tending
So
towards.
we can't fool you now.
No.
It's not just the food diary. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
I have data now telling
Right.
me you're eating too much carbs.
And that's what we're talking about with prebiotics, right? Because those are the things feeding the actual microbiome. And then the probiotics are actually trying to help seed that rainforest, right? If we have a sparse rainforest that is not very dense, then there are particular probiotics we can use. And I usually work with a couple of other supplements to make the environment as receptive as possible, because the way the microbiome works together, and there is quorum sensing is how they talk with each other. It's very, very involved, right? And so for them to take hold and live there, we want to put it in the best situation possible. So that's why we would look at different probiotics and which strains, depending on what your GI map comes back with.
So there is no one size fits all.
Absolutely
everybody should take
not.
a prebiotic. Everybody should take a probiotic. They're different kinds.
Right. And this is not an indefinite thing. This is something that we might do for 3 months to get you at a healthy place. And then you can actually do a metabolomics functional test where you're actually looking at the metabolites from your gut biome to make sure that your postbiotics are there and what's working with them. Those are things like butyrate, and looking to make sure that we have enough butyrate in our system and stuff like that. So start to finish, we can analyze it all.
Yeah, and it's dynamic. Like, it's not one point in time. It's changing with eating different things. We're traveling to different places. So
Yes.
Our microbiome is evolving with us.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a journey. It's a journey to get to know yourself, a journey inside. And thank you for making it so beautiful for all our members and fun. I know you break it down into bite-sized, actionable steps that we do. And that's why it's so nice, because Sydenham is a lifestyle,
Yes.
It's not just you come here to fix anything.
Correct.
Like, we all learn and grow together. Before we end, I always ask our guests for the first time whenever they come on the show, what is your secret sutra? Sutra are like life rules in Sanskrit. So what is your secret mantra or secret sutra for yourself?
Well, it was very much something I grabbed a hold of last year for sure, but it's, you cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you were to apply that to like diet and lifestyle, what does that mean?
Well, I think there's always new information, right? There's new science, there's new research, and you can't shift and adjust to everything, but you can learn what you need from it and you can ride with it.
Yeah, For sure. And, even if some people don't want to know. I don't want to know. If I get it, I get it. I'll deal with it then. But
Right.
I think this secret sutra of yours can help us because, we can learn a little bit of surfing.
Yes. My son calls it radical surfing.
Ooh, radical acceptance, radical surfing. Nice. Well, thank you so much. This is the first of many podcasts we're going to do with Heather. And if there's specific things you want her to really dive deep, as you can see, she's a scientist. So she can go really deep and she can get quite nerdy. But we want that. We want Ask Syd is a place where you will get legitimate, very middle of the road, very actionable information. Like, we're not very extreme. I think we're very realistic about wanting to live to 120.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Before I sign off, I want to remind you, health is by choice, not by chance. Please like, subscribe, and share the message with everybody. Thank you.